हेलो गाइस, हेलो एवरीवन। सो मुझे लाइव आते आते काफ़ी ज़्यादा टाइम हो गया, बट इट्स ओके। मैंने 6 बजे का बोला था और 1 घंटा लेट हूँ मैं, बट मैं कंटिन्यू रहूँगी अब कल से प्रॉपरली एकदम। और मैंने टाइम तो अभी 6 बजे के आसपास ही सोचा है। आज लेट हो गया बट आगे से नहीं होगा। एंड प्लस रात में भी एक लाइव मैंने सोचा है। आई नो थोड़ा सा कम्युनिटी पूरा बिल्डअप करने के लिए मुझे टाइम लगेगा, बट इट्स ओके। थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा, दैट इज़ एब्सोल्युटली फाइन। और अभी आज मैंने सोचा है मैं मेडिसिन स्टार्ट करूँगी। और पहली यूनिट जो मैं स्टार्ट करूँगी मेडिसिन में पल्मोनोलॉजी करूँगी, रेस्पिरेटरी। और आज तो ज़्यादा देर नहीं पढ़ूँगी, बाद में 10 बजे भले लाइव आ जाऊँ, क्योंकि अभी मैंने बताया था ना कल फेयरवेल थी हम लोगों की। एंड तो फिर पूरा दिन उसमें निकल गया। एंड अभी ये स्टार्ट करते हैं। ओके, मेरा वीडियो भी डाउनलोड हो गया है। इतना ज़्यादा है ना मेडिसिन, आई डोंट नो कैसे ख़त्म होगा। बहुत 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 ज़्यादा है। और मैं अभी पहला लेक्चर देखने जा रही हूँ। वो तो जाएगा ही, लाइक लास्ट में आते आते तक ऐसे ही हो जाता है कि सब हो जाएगा हो जाएगा, बट इस बार काफ़ी सारे सब्जेक्ट्स हैं। हाय इरशाद, हाय। कैसे हो आप लोग? देख के डर लग रहा है मुझे, पता नहीं कैसे ख़त्म करूँगी। लाइक काफ़ी सारे हमारे बैच में ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने ख़त्म भी कर दिया होगा मेडिसिन तो। एंड आई एम लाइक कि पता नहीं कैसे होगा। ये इतनी सी है, इतनी मोटी, और एक इसका वॉल्यूम और रखा हुआ है। बट मैं चाहती हूँ ना मेरे लाइफ में एकदम जेन्युइन लोग ज्वाइन हो, या फिर जो सब्सक्राइब करें, जेन्युइन पर्सन करें। हाय हाय प्रांजल। सॉरी, पता नहीं अपने आप से बंद हो गया था। ओके गाइस, स्टार्ट करते हैं यार। आप लोग भी पढ़ो अगर पढ़ रहे हो तो।
Hi guys, in this pulmonology section, instead of beginning with traditional data like pneumonia or pleural effusion,
मेरा ईयरफोन कहाँ है? ये तो मैंने रखा ही नहीं। सेटअप तो सब कुछ करके बैठ गई हूँ। शिट यार, अब मुझे उठना पड़ेगा। मिल गया। ऐसे आप लोग को भी डिस्टर्ब ना, इफ़ जो लोग ज्वाइन करेंगे। म्यूट कर सकती हूँ वैसे मैं, ये भी ठीक है यार। मेरे रूम में मेरी रूममेट भी नहीं है अभी, तो घर गई हुई है। म्यूट ही कर लेती हूँ। आप लोग भी पढ़ो गाइस। जो भी कमेंट्स करेगा वो मैं बाद में देख लूँगी एंड आई विल रिप्लाई। यार मैंने पहली बार मेडिसिन रेसिपी उठाई थी और मुझे कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, एकदम ब्लैंक हो रहा है। अब मैं कौन सी यूनिट उठाऊं कि मुझे थोड़ा सा इजी लगे, तो फिर थोड़ा स्मूथली पढ़ सकूं, मुझे समझ ही नहीं आ रहा है। कार्डियो उठाई थी, वो भी मुझे बहुत टफ लग रही थी। मुझे लगा सबसे पहले जो इजी से उठाऊंगी तो थोड़ा पढ़ने में मन लगेगा। मेरा दिमाग ख़राब हो रहा है, मैं क्या पढूं। ये पढ़ना तो है ही, अगर सर्जरी अभी उठाऊंगी भी तो भी कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है। इन्फेक्शन पढ़ लेती हूँ, इन्फेक्शन तो मुझे समझ आ ही जाएगा।
Thick and this.
क्या है भाई, बहुत गंदी है मेडिसिन। अच्छी भी है बट समझने में काफ़ी वक्त लगेगा, एकदम बेसिक वाला पढ़ना पड़ेगा, पैथो वगैरह। फिर से डाउनलोड भी नहीं हो रहा है प्लस।
Hi guys, welcome back. We shall now talk about FUO, that is fever of unknown origin, also called as pyrexia of unknown origin. Topic, we will first talk regarding diurnal duration of temperature in our body. You can see that the maximum temperature is usually seen in the evening hours, whereas the least temperature is seen in the early morning hours, usually around about 4 a.m. in the morning. To keep a uniformity in the discussion, I will try to use Fahrenheit as a unit most of the time.
God, it's so difficult. आती हूँ मैं 1 मिनट. आधा टाइम तो ये ढूंढने में निकल जाएगा कि पढ़ूँ आखिर किससे. मैरू से, प्रेप से, किससे पढ़ूँ आखिर मैं मेडिसिन में. हाँ भाई, 10 मिनट मैंने ऐसे ही निकाल दिए. कुछ समझ ही नहीं आ रहा है. सारे रिव्यूज़ देखे थे तो फिर यही था कि प्रेप से पढ़ो, प्रेप से पढ़ो. दीपक मारवा सर बहुत अच्छे हैं, बहुत अच्छे हैं, बट कुछ नहीं समझ आ रहा है मुझे. पहली बार में सब ऊपर से जा रहा है. अब मैं मेरे के नोट्स लेके आई हूँ, ये पढ़ के देखती हूँ. इसके नोट्स तो अच्छे दिख रहे हैं, मुझे लग रहा है मुझे समझ आ जाएगा. यहाँ सारा बेसिक से दे रखा है. हाय फलक, हाउ आर यू? ओके, अभी मुझे फिर से वीडियो डाउनलोड करना पड़ेगा. देन आई विल स्टार्ट. बहुत दिक्कत है भाई. इतने सारे वीडियोस हैं. क्लिनिकल एनाटॉमी ऑफ लंग्स. मिल ही नहीं रहा है. लेक्चर ही पता नहीं कहाँ है. क्या चल रही है lungs. renal हो गया. sinus हो गया. gastro. ऐसा करती हूँ ना, गैस्ट्रो से पढ़ने जा रही हूँ, भग दिमाग खराब हो रहा है। ओके, गैस्ट्रो से पढ़ते हैं, जो होगा देखा जाएगा, कुछ तो घुसेगा बुद्धि में। लास्ट टाइम मैं डायरिया पढ़ रही थी और फिर म्यूज़िक बजने लगा था, उसके बाद से तो मैंने पढ़ा ही नहीं था। यही पढ़ लेती हूँ। लाइक लिटरली आई वेस्टेड 20 मिनट्स। और इसके पहले वाले लाइक थोड़े दिन पहले भी मैं ये सब ढूंढ ही रही थी कि किस सब्जेक्ट से पढूं। बहुत टाइम लगता है भाई, बट आई विश बस समझ आ जाए मुझे सब। बाकी सब तो ठीक है। Stone water contain more than 200 per ml 24 hours according to Bristol Stone chart. Physiology of absorption, luminal, mucosal, and then post-mucosal macronutrient for absorption, fat, carbohydrate, and proteins. And then the frequency of the classification, acute, persistent, and then chronic. Chronic में more than 4 weeks, persistent more than 2 weeks, acute में less than 2 weeks. एक्यूट डायरिया, क्रॉनिक डायरिया, एक्यूट में है इन्फेक्शन से होगा, वायरल इन्फेक्शन मोस्ट कॉमन होगा, मोस्ट कॉमन इन एडल्ट, मोस्ट कॉमन इन चिल्ड्रन, रोटा। ओके, सर्कुलेटिंग होता है, खुद से ठीक हो जाएगा। क्रॉनिक में ऑस्मोटिक, सेक्रेटरी, इन्फ्लेमेटरी। ऑस्मोटिक malabsorption की वजह से होगा, एंड सेक्रेटरी ट्यूमर टॉक्सिन, इन्फ्लेमेटरी इन्फ्लेमेटरी बाउल डिजीज, maldigestion plus malabsorption is that one dissemination. most consistent clinical symptom of malabsorption. Osmotic. Okay. Diarrhea. Okay. Most consistent clinical finding. Decreased fat absorption in a small intestine and colon, unabsorbed macronutrient, increased stomach osmolarity. फैट का absorption कम हुआ, then unabsorbed macronutrient ने स्टूल की osmolarity बढ़ाई, then स्टूल जाएगा पानी में, और intestinal इन्वेस्टिगेशन फैट टेस्ट कराएंगे जो कि गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड होता है. इसके बाद प्रोसीजर क्या होगा, फैट का इनपुट 100 ग्राम पर डे होता है, फैट अब्सॉर्ब हुआ, एंड देन उसके बाद नॉर्मल जो होगा 7 मोर देन 7 ग्राम होगा डेली का, नहीं हाँ नहीं लेस देन नॉर्मल होगा 7 ग्राम से, और मोर देन 7 होगा तो 3 दिन, तीसरे चौथे पाँचवें दिन स्टूल फैट एक्सक्रीशन मोर देन 7. स्टूल का कलेक्शन होगा, देन स्टूल के स्मॉल स्टूल कलेक्शन में क्या अनसुपरवाइज अगर होगा, मिक्स होगा लाइक वाटर में, अगर तो स्टूल की स्मॉलरिटी बहुत कम होगी, लाइक अप्रॉक्स 16 मिली ऑस्मोलर, एंड देन सुपरवाइज होगा तो नॉर्मल अप्रॉक्स 279. ओके. पैथोलॉजिकल था या एनाटोमिकल में स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन और लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन के बेसिस पे होगा. स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन डायरिया अगर होगा तो ऑस्मोटिक होगा, सिक्रेटरी होगा, ठीक, जो कि वेब्रियो कॉलेरा से होगा, एंड देन क्या होगा, लार्ज होगा, कंसिस्टेंसी में पानी जैसा होगा, वाटरी, फ्रीक्वेंसी कम होगी, पस नहीं होगा, टेनेस्मस नहीं, टेनेस्मस एब्सेंट होता है, डिशेजिया, ये क्या होता है, डिशेजिया, डिशेजिया. डिश हेजिया मतलब होता है डिफ़िकल्टी पोपिंग। कहाँ जा रही है तू?
मैं तो दोस्त को लेने जा रही हूँ।
यार ये कितना गंदा है ये वाला मेडिसिन, वो वाला प्रेप वाला।
हेलो यार, ओ दीदी वो आंटी को फोन कर लीजिए। ठीक ठीक।
मैंने इससे स्टार्ट किया था यार दीपक मारवा से, मुझे कुछ समझ ही नहीं आया था। फिर मैंने मैरो से राकेश नायर से पढ़ना, क्योंकि ना इसमें बेसिक है। वो पता क्यों अच्छा है, बहुत कॉन्साइज है बहुत। लाइक अगर आप पीजी के लिए प्रिपेयर करोगे तब दीपक मारवा से पढ़ो प्रेप वाला, अदरवाइज तुमको एक बार ये तो करना पड़ेगा। राकेश
तो पढ़ रही है, पीजी के लिए पढ़ रही है
यार, लेकिन तुम एक बार में उसको नहीं पढ़ सकते ना, पहले तुमको ये करना
है। तो सुन बहुत बड़ा है ना मारवा, तो उसको पीजी के लिए पढ़।
पहले वो ये ज्यादा है इसके तो
प्रेप लेटर वाला है ना मारवा?
मेरे पास तो दोनों है।
अरे मैं बोल रही हूँ प्रेप लेटर वाला मारवा है ना?
हाँ
तो जो प्रेप लेटर वाला है वो पूरा पढ़ ले पहले, ये वाला तो बिना पढ़े पढ़ सकते, क्योंकि सीधा इस वो जब तुझे समझ आ रहेगा तो ये पढ़ ले।
वो बहुत गंदा है, बिल्कुल ऊपर से जा रहा है। मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है पहले मुझे ये पढ़ना पड़ेगा और फिर मुझे ये पढ़ना चाहिए। क्योंकि मैंने कार्डियो नहीं पढ़ा, मैं रेसिपी पढ़ रही थी पहले, और रेसिपी भी इतना टफ है। कार्डियो इसीलिए मैंने बंद करके रख दिया था। तू कहाँ जा रही है?
गेट में बंद करना, मैं अभी देखे बॉस लोगों को और फिर तेरे पास वापस आऊंगी उठाने।
ठीक है, वैसे
अभी तो रेसिपी जा रही हूँ।
हाँ ठीक है,
बाय
बाय। मतलब पैथोकल क्लासिफिकेशन के अकॉर्डिंग 3 टाइप का डायरिया है, ऑस्मोटिक, सेक्रेटरी एंड इन्फेक्शियस। और एनाटॉमी के हिसाब से है 2 टाइप का, स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन वाला डायरिया और हमारा एक लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन वाला डायरिया। स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन डायरिया ऑस्मोटिक होगा, सिक्रेटरी होगा। एक तो इकोलाई से होगा, एक कॉलेरा से होगा, विब्रियो कॉलेरा से। इसमें ना बहुत ज़्यादा अमाउंट, लार्ज अमाउंट में, लार्ज वॉल्यूम होगा। ओके। कंसिस्टेंसी वाटरी होता है और फ्रीक्वेंसी मतलब डिक्रीज होता है। पस नहीं होगा, कोई टेनिसमस नहीं होगा, डिफ़िकल्टी नहीं होगी पोपिंग में, पेन भी नहीं होगा पेट में, फीवर भी नहीं होगा, लेकिन क्रैम्प्स होंगे, ब्लोटिंग भी होगी, वेट भी कम हो जाएगा, उल्टी भी होगी और स्टेटोरिया भी होगा। और लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन वाला ये होता है कि इन्फेक्शन से होगा। उधर वाला इकोलाई और कॉलेरा से हो रहा था, ये वाला शिगेला से होगा। और इसमें वॉल्यूम भी कम रहता है और वाटरी तो दोनों होते हैं डायरिया। फ्रीक्वेंसी इसमें ज़्यादा रहेगा एंड पस वगैरह इसमें प्रेजेंट रहता है अगर लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन में डायरिया हुआ तो। ठीक है। डिफ़िकल्टी भी होगी इसमें, फीवर भी होगा, एब्डोमेन क्रैम्प भी होंगे, ब्लोटिंग भी होगी, लेकिन वेट कम बहुत रेयरली होगा, वॉमिटिंग भी रेयरली होगी, स्टेटोरिया नहीं होगा। एक मिनट। दो हफ्ते से कम अगर है तो इन्फेक्शन हुआ हो सकता है। स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन का होगा तो फिर लार्ज वॉल्यूम होगा और वायरल ही हो सकता है मोस्ट कॉमनली। और इकोलाई और कॉलरा ही होगा और खुद से ठीक हो जाएगा। लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन वाले में बुखार आएगा, पेट में दर्द होगा, खून आएगा, म्यूकस आएगा और इसमें शिगेला वगैरह ऑर्गेनिज्म होंगे, शिगेला, सैल्मोनेला, कैम्पाइलोबैक्टर। और फिर अगर 4 हफ्ते से ज़्यादा आएगा तो फिर दोनों अलग वही फिर से स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन, लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन। स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन वाले में ऑस्मोटिक और सिक्रेटरी होगा। ऑस्मोटिक होगा तो स्टूल का जो ऑस्मोटिक गैप है वो ज़्यादा होगा और ठीक हो सकता है ये अगर हम फास्ट वगैरह रखें तो। सिक्रेटरी वाला वाइपोमा, लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन वाला इन्फ्लेमेटरी होता है जो कि अल्सरेटिव कोलाइटिस होता है। सो एक चैप्टर मैंने कर लिया है जो कि मैंने पहले से कर रखा था, लास्ट वाला छूट गया था, तो फिर ये अभी मैंने कंप्लीट कर लिया और अभी मुझे दूसरा लेक्चर लेना है। डाउनलोड ही नहीं हुआ है अभी, बहुत पढ़ना पड़ेगा यार, इतना तो समझ में आ रहा है। तो पहले इसको पढ़ो फिर मारवा को पढ़ो, बहुत झंझट है भाई। मेरे मैम ने भी ऐसे ही पढ़ा था, मैंने उनसे पूछा था कि मेडिसिन आपने कैसे पढ़ी, तो उन्होंने बोला था पहले मैंने मारवा से पढ़ा था एंड देन आफ्टर दैट मैंने इससे पढ़ा था। लेकिन मैं पहले इससे पढ़ रही हूँ क्योंकि मेरे बेसिक्स मैं सब भूल चुकी हूँ, तो बेसिक्स इससे अच्छा हो जाएगा। फिर उसको उठाऊँगी या फिर इसी को 2-3 बार पढ़ लूँगी यार, है तो सारी चीज़ें वही ना, बट उसको भी पढ़ लूँगी। सब ऐसा बोलते हैं कि इसको पढ़ो, मेडिसिन को मारवा से ज़्यादा अच्छा है, ज़्यादा अच्छा है। चीज़ें उलझी उलझी बैठी हैं।
Welcome to this integration module. Now, when students keep talking about the entrance exam, there is a general fear among students for medicine because medicine is very complex and tough and ABC reasons. they tend to think that even if you skip medicine and go for the exam, okay, if you're good, well off with respect to the other simple subjects, you might still be in with a decent chance. That is primarily because they think like medicine questions are, say, how many? 30, 35 questions out of 200. But when I look at the paper, I see 80, 85 questions in medicine out of 200. You see only 30, 35 questions in medicine out of 200. My aim is in a 300 exam paper, somebody watching my videos should answer 140, okay? And in a 200 exam paper, somebody watching my videos should answer 85, 90. This is my aim. If I teach only medicine, then it is not possible. It's absolutely not possible. As you said, 35, 40% are all what comes from medicine. But the rank determining remaining questions are integrated questions. Integrated question means the question is not belonging to any one chapter or any one subject for that matter. Question may be physiology, medicine overlap, it may be medicine micro overlap, it may be medicine radio overlap. So anybody can claim the question. So this is an overlap kind of module wherein we are talking of physiology of absorption. It's very important for me to take the discussion forward. And if you can actually, if you're very thorough with physiology of absorption already, from physiology, you can just rush through this. But there are some important clinical points, which is what integration is all about. So we're going to talk about this physiology of absorption. So when we talk about this word called absorption, what comes to our mind? I told you absorption is basically about three parts. There is a luminal part of the absorption, which is happening in the lumen. So many enzymes are not you'll see. But majority of the luminal absorption is done with the help of enzymes. Because when we talk of absorption, we have again carbohydrate absorption, fat and protein absorption. So these are the three things. So naturally enzymes are very important, whether it be carbohydrate or fat or protein. So enzymes are again extremely important for us. And that is the luminal part of absorption. But we are generally concerned maximum about the second part of absorption. The second part of absorption is the most important part of it, which is the small intestinal mucosal absorption. So small intestinal mucosal absorption is what we are actually very much bothered about. In this small intestinal mucosal absorption, we have the small intestinal mucosal enterocyte. Okay, which is the cell in the small intestine, which we call as the small intestinal mucosal enterocyte. This enterocyte has so much of brush border, and this brush border of the small intestinal enterocyte actually has so many enzymes. So small intestinal enterocyte brush border with the enzymes. This is essentially what is actually keeping us interested in this whole point of absorption. So essentially, I'm going to talk a lot about the small intestinal mucosa, the mucosal enterocyte, and this mucosal enterocyte is very special because it has villi. We don't see villi anywhere else. In the colon and all, we don't see villi. So villi are there. They are there on the small intestinal mucosal enterocyte, and this enterocyte has got brush border, and the brush border has so many enzymes, which are also very important. So on the whole, what am I really interested? I'm really interested about the small intestinal mucosa. And the third part of absorption is what I call as the post-mucosal absorption, which we'll see in the end. Because it is not that important, we'll see that later on. So that's the post-mucosal absorption. That is from the mucosa epithelial cell. How does it actually go into the blood proper? So post-mucosal absorption. So when we start to discuss the physiology of absorption, who is the central player? Means the central player is the small intestine. And I can actually say the small intestinal enterocyte. The small intestinal enterocyte is the central player as far as the whole physiology of absorption is concerned. And let me just try to bring in the fact that small intestine has a proximal 2/5 and a distal 3/5. So proximal 2/5 and a distal 3/5. This proximal 2/5 is made up of the duodenum and the jejunum. Okay, and the distal 3/5 is made up of the ileum. So small intestinal mucosal enterocyte has this duodenum as well as the jejunum, which makes up the proximal 2/5, and distal 3/5 is the ileum. And almost all the ions are maximally absorbed in the proximal 2/5 itself. That means you take carbohydrate, you take fat, you take protein. They are all maximally absorbed in the proximal 2/5 itself. Between the duodenum and jejunum, if you ask me for any exam, nobody's going to ask you that it is proximal. No, they don't say duodenum and jejunum separately. It's proximal small intestine. But in case somebody asks you, then the answer is jejunum. Okay, in case somebody asks you, the answer is jejunum. What are the three things that are exclusively being absorbed from the distal small intestine? Very important physiology question. Answer is bile acids, B12 and magnesium. Bile acid, B12 and magnesium are three things which are exclusively absorbed from the distal small intestine. That is your ileum. Everything else is being absorbed from the proximal small intestine. That is your duodenum and jejunum. That is your 2/5. Of which, in case somebody is asking between duodenum and jejunum, the answer is jejunum. So everything is from the proximal small intestine. These three things alone are from the distal small intestine. So again and again, physiology asks for the exam. Bile acids, B12 and magnesium are from the distal small intestine. So when you look into the small intestine, or as such, you know that we have the mucosa, we have the submucosa, then we have the muscularis, which we call as the muscularis propria. And then of course we have the serosa. So we have the mucosa, we have the submucosa, we have the muscularis propria and the serosa. Mucosa is again made up of this mucosal epithelial cell. Mucosal intestinal epithelial cell is what we actually call it. Then we have the lamina propria. Okay, lamina propria. Lamina propria is a loose attachment, okay, which contains some glands, some vessels on which you have this epithelial cell. And then we have a much more tighter attachment, which we call as the muscularis mucosa. So muscularis mucosa is a much more tighter attachment. Lamina propria is a loose elastic attachment on which the cell can actually maneuver. And this cell has got a lot of villi. So this is going to be a very interesting point because nowhere else we have villi. So this villi with the brush border and all that is helping you also on a lot of things. At the same time, we are having certain crypts also. So we are having the villi as well as we are having the crypts. So this is how the basic anatomy everything is. And if you look at one histology diagram to understand this, you will be able to make out the villi and you will be able to make out the crypt. And this is a much more important depiction of crypt. Okay, and again it will be coming into that. So let us try to understand the basic exam questions. This has to be very clear. Villi and crypts are what we are actually talking about. Continuous, these are all exam questions. Okay, one line of questions. Continuous renewal of the intestinal epithelial cell. Intestinal epithelial gets renewed so quickly. This is a practical point. That's why infectious diarrhea generally lasts for 1 to 3 days because the epithelial cell gets renewed inside 1 to 3 days. Continuous renewal of the intestinal epithelial cell happens every 40 to 72 hours. Cylindrical structure surrounding the villi. If you see the villi, you surrounding, you can see the cylindrical structures. These cylindrical structures which actually surround the villi are called as your crypts of Liverpool. Okay, so whenever you see a villi, we always say that this is a villi with the crypt. And that crypt is not the crypt that I'm talking of in the beginning. That means intestine has villi and then crypts. That is equal to this crypt. Okay, that is this crypt which you see right down at the bottom. What we are actually talking of here is a cylindrical structure surrounding the villi with the crypts of Liverpool. The cylindrical structure surrounding the villi are the crypts of Liverpool. Then we have the alpha defenses, lysozymes, phospholipase A2. So a lot of immunological substances being produced by parent cells. Okay, again, the importance of planet cells, everything will come to when you study inflammatory bowel disease. So defense cells, lysozymes, etc. are being produced from the planet cells. And you can actually see that these planet cells are actually in the base of the crypt. Okay, the base of the crypt, you can actually see the planet cells. Okay, so these are the planet cells. You can identify the planet cells. There are a few more other cells actually speaking with respect to the crypt, but not important for us. What we are studying is mostly with respect to the planet cell. There are other endocrine cells, the goblet cells, etc., etc. But what is important is the planet cells. Okay. Next question you have here is on the luminal surface of the small intestine has mucosal folds. The mucosal folds that you actually see on the luminal surface of the small intestine is called as your plica circularis. Okay, plica circularis. The pacemaker cells of the small intestine, which are responsible for generating the basic electrical rhythm, are your interstitial cells of the jaw. Okay, these are all one-liners repeatedly asked for the exam, so I don't want you to miss out on this. What are the submucosal glands in the duodenum which secrete bicarbonate-rich alkaline juice? Submucosal glands in the duodenum which secrete bicarbonate-rich juice is your Brunner's gland. Okay, Brunner's glands. And the macroscopic lymphoid aggregates that you see in the ileum, and you get Peyer's patches, hypertrophic, etc. In diaphragm, we'll come to that, is your Peyer's patches. Okay, so Peyer's patches. This is basically seen in an ileocolonoscopy. This is naturally in an endoscopy you can go as far as D2 D3 only, so you can't go beyond that. So this is an ileocolonoscopy where you're seeing some Peyer's patches. Hypertrophic Peyer's patches, something which you see in typhoid. So these are all the basic one-liners. So just have a know-how of this, that the small intestinal mucosa is the most important thing that we are going to discuss. It has numerous villi. Villi is surrounded by cylindrical structures called as your crypts of liver. And then of course the villi with the brush border. Brush border is having so many enzymes, and that is essentially helping us to absorb. And the key topic that we are going to discuss here is absorption. Okay, so this is a basic outline. So when I start discussing absorption, naturally I need to be talking about three types of absorption. One is the fat absorption, second is the protein absorption, and third is the carbohydrate absorption. So all those things are very, very important. Let me start discussing about fat absorption. Why do I discuss fat absorption first? Naturally, because fat is the most calorie dense nutrient, as I have told you so many times, and specific. It is very, very specific to any disease process that affects your absorption. So that is why we're going to talk about fat absorption. When we talk about fat absorption, most of the dietary fat that we eat is
हिस्टोलॉजी में म्यूकोसा है, सबम्यूकोसा है, मस्कुलरिस प्रोप्रिया है, देन सेरोसा है. म्यूकोसा में एंटेरोसाइट्स हैं, क्रिप्स हैं, लेमिना एंटेरोसाइट है, लेमिना प्रोप्रिया है, मस्कुलरिस म्यूकोसा. एंटेरोसाइट में वेलाई एंड क्रिप्स. वेलाई में जो कि सराउंडेड होगी क्रिप्स ऑफ लिवर कौन सी कंटेन करेगी ब्रश पाउडर. क्रिप्स में पैनेट सेल एंड देन एंटेरोएंडोक्राइन सेल, देन गॉबलेट सेल. कॉन्टिन्यूस रिन्यूअल होगा 48 से 72 घंटे के बाद. लेमिना प्रोप्रिया में ग्लैंड्स हैं, ब्लड वेसल्स हैं, एंड मस्कुलरिस म्यूकोसा का टाइट अटैचमेंट होता है. ओके, सबम्यूकोसा में ब्रूनर्स ग्लैंड है जो कि ड्यूडेनम में होती है, वो सिक्रीट करती है बाइकार्बोनेट की. प्योर्स पैचेस हमारी इलियम में होते हैं, एंड देन मैक्रोस्कोपिक लिम्फॉइड इकट्ठा हो जाते हैं. इन टाइफाइड हाइपरट्रॉफी हो जाएगी. मस्कुलरिस प्रोप्रिया एंड देन सेरोसा. फिर है हमारा फैट एब्जॉर्प्शन, लिमिनल फेज ऑफ एब्जॉर्प्शन. ओके,
in which form most of the dietary fat that we eat is in this triglyceride form. So most of the dietary fat that we eat is in this triglyceride form. This triglyceride form is what is actually coming into the small intestine, and we're going to talk about the process. Every step in the process is very, very important. First, these triglycerides have to be broken down into fatty acid and glycerol. Okay, so first this triglyceride has to be broken down into fatty acid and glycerol. For triglyceride to be broken down into fatty acid and glycerol, which we call as the step called lipolysis, because across the small intestine mucus only fatty acid can be absorbed, no triglyceride can be absorbed. So fatty acid absorption to happen, it has to be broken down. This is happening with the help of an enzyme called pancreatic lipase. So this is the luminal digestion part. Luminal digestion part is done by the enzyme called pancreatic lipase, and lipolysis happens, and we are having this fatty acid. So this is now very, very clear that fatty acid is formed. And I bring to picture the first critical point that fat absorption can be studied very easily, keeping in mind the whole process, the physiology process. The first step is this lipolysis. Lipolysis can be affected whenever there is an issue with pancreatic lipase, and I bring this disease called chronic pancreatitis into picture, which means that chronic pancreatitis will be resulting in defective lipase, resulting in absence of lipolysis, and that is the main reason why you are having steatorrhea or you are having fat malabsorption in pancreatitis. Very important physiological state. This fatty acid has to get across the small intestinal mucous epithelial cell. This is the enterocyte that I am talking of, which is the small intestinal mucous epithelial cell. Don't ever think that this fatty acid can just like that go inside. No, it cannot go inside. For the fatty acid to go into the small intestinal mucous epithelial cell, which is where in the proximal small intestine, that is your first two fifths, which is duodenum and jejunum, it has to be absorbed only what is formed micelle. So micelle is what is getting absorbed, not the fatty acid per se. So the fatty acid has to be complexed with phospholipids and something very, very important to form micelle. So that is why micelle formation is the next major step, and micelle formation is possible only with bile acid. So very, very, very important. Micelle formation is possible only with bile acid, and that is why I am now trying to write the second major issue is a bile acid defect. If at all there's a bile acid defect, you will get fatty acid malabsorption. We will see what is a bile acid defect, etc. as we discuss forward. So very, very important. First thing is you need pancreatic lipase, 100%. Second thing, you require bile acids. If you don't have bile acids, then there is no point, no use, because if bile acids are not there, micelles cannot be formed. Micelles are not formed, fat cannot be absorbed. Major player is bile acid. Let us come to bile acid discussion. This is extremely important discussion because we are now trying to talk about what we call as enterohepatic circulation. Again, only clinically relevant things. See, only 500 mg of bile acid is being formed per day. Okay, 500 mg of bile acid is being excreted per day. So 500 mg of bile acid is formed per day, 500 mg of bile acid is excreted per day. But if you look at the bile acid pool in our body, the bile acid pool in our body is 4 grams. So in spite of having only 500 mg bile acid formed and 500 mg bile acid excreted, how can we have a pool of 4 grams? This pool of 4 grams is made possible by enterohepatic circulation. Let us see how. First is synthesis. So synthesis of bile acid actually happens at the level of the liver. So liver is where, liver cytoplasm is where bile acid is being synthesized. 7 alpha hydroxylase is the rate limiting enzyme. And all you know, my first business, what are the bile acids synthesized? The bile acids which are synthesized are called my primary bile acids. The primary bile acids are choric acid and quinodeoxycholic acid. So choric acid is there, quinodeoxycholic acid is there. These are my primary bile acids. These primary bile acids are now conjugated with glycine and taurine. Okay, they are conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. Okay, this reminds me of our class. So we did not have any online platform to learn, so we had just offline platforms. And offline platform during those times, we don't have writing mode of teaching, no writing mode, nothing. So PPT is there, teacher will come, he will lecture and he will go. So he will lecture and you come with a notebook like a routine college class, you write something on the note and you go. That is all what you have. From that point, you are having videos, you are having video notes, then you are having offline notes, this, that, etc. But finally, at the end of the day, whether you know what is required is the best in maths. So it's not about like writing notes, not about like accumulating notes, it's about what goes inside. So conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. So what is a bile salt? What is a conjugated bile acid? So conjugated bile acid is what we call as a bile salt. So this conjugation is very important because it is bile salt which actually forms the micelle. Although I told you roughly that bile acid forms the micelle, it's a bile salt which forms the micelle. Or conjugated bile acid has to form the micelle. So it is transported to D2. So from the liver it is transported to D2 because it is the second part of deodorant that all these micelles are being formed. So transported to D2, micelle is actually formed, and this micelle will be used for fat absorption. So fat absorption, you'll be having this micelle and this micelle is being used for fat absorption. The remaining bile acid, okay, the remaining conjugated bile acid now is being taken back by the ileum. So it's a taurine from oxycholic acid. These are my primary bile acids. These primary bile acids are now conjugated with glycine and taurine. Okay, they are conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. Okay, this reminds me of our class. So we did not have any online platform to learn, so we had just offline platforms. And offline platform during those times, we don't have writing mode of teaching, no writing mode, nothing. So PPT is there, teacher will come, he will lecture and he will go. So he will lecture and you come with a notebook like a routine college class, and you write something on the note and you go. That is all what you have. From that point, you are having offline notes, this, that, etc. But finally, at the end of the day, whether you know what is required is the best in maths. So it's not about like writing notes, not about like accumulating notes. It's about what goes inside. So conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. So what is a bile salt? What is a conjugated bile acid? So conjugated bile acid is what we call as a bile salt. So this conjugation is very important because this is bile salt which actually forms the micelle. Although I told you roughly that bile acid forms the micelle, it is a bile salt which forms the micelle. Or conjugated bile acid has to form the micelle. So it is transported to D2. So from the liver it is transported to D2 because it is in second part of deodorant that all these micelles are being formed. So transported to D2, micelle is actually formed, and this micelle will be used for fat absorption. So fat absorption, you'll be having this micelle and this micelle is being used for fat absorption. The remaining bile acid, okay, the remaining conjugated bile acid
Go to the colon and the
now
ileum
is being
and
taken back by the ileum. So it is taken back by the ileum. It is actually an active absorption, okay, active sodium mediated absorption, which is happening at the level of the ileum. And from the ileum, it is going back into the liver. So it is going back into the liver. Now, whatever is actually not taken back by the ileum is going into the colon. So whatever is not being taken back by the ileum is going into the colon. And in the colon, it is deconjugated. It is deconjugated at the level of the colon to form the secondary bile acids. So the secondary bile acids are formed where they are formed at the level of the colon. What are the names of the secondary bile acid? Deoxycholic acid and liptocholic acid. So deoxycholic acid and liptocholic acid are the names of my secondary bile acids. So what are the things that are happening? Bile acid is being produced by the liver. It is conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. It is transported into the second part of the deodorant where micelles are formed and that is used for fat absorption. Then it is coming into the large intestine. Sorry, it is coming into the ileum that is getting reabsorbed. And this reabsorption is the reason why the pool is 4 grams per day. 500 mg is produced, 500 mg is excreted because it is going back into the liver. And whatever is not absorbed is coming back into the colon, where it is acted upon the bacteria at the level of the colon to form the deconjugated secondary bile acids. Secondary bile acids are deoxycholic acid and liptocholic acid. Cholic acid and quinodeoxycholic acid are primary bile acids. Conjugated bile acids are called bile salts. Bile salts are required for micelle formation. Okay, so I think I have made this very, very clear, and this is all that you need to know with respect to the exam. Now, what can be a bile acid defect? Bile acid defect can be a synthesis defect, which bile acid acid are treated with gluten. I told you roughly that bile acid, so we don't have any online platform to learn, so we are just offline platform. Hydroxylase is the rate limiting enzyme. And now you know, my first business, what are the bile acids synthesized? The bile acids which are synthesized are called my primary bile acids. The primary bile acids are choric acid and quinodeoxycholic acid. So choric acid is there, quinodeoxycholic acid is there. These are my primary bile acids. These primary bile acids are now conjugated with glycine and taurine. Okay, they are conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. Okay, this reminds me of our class. So we did not have any online platform to learn, so we had just offline platforms. And offline platform during those times, we don't have writing mode of teaching, no writing mode, nothing. So PPT is there, teacher will come, he will lecture and he will go. So he will lecture and you come with a notebook like a routine college class, and you write something on the note and you go. That is all what you have. From that point, you are having videos, you are having video notes, then you are having offline notes, this, that, etc. But finally, at the end of the day, whether you know what is required is the best in maths. So it's not about like writing notes, not about like accumulating notes. It's about what goes inside. So conjugated with glycine and taurine to form bile salts. So what is a bile salt? What is a conjugated bile acid? So conjugated bile acid is what we call as a bile salt. So this conjugation is very important because this is bile salt which actually forms the micelle. Although I told you roughly that bile acid forms the micelle, it is a bile salt which forms the micelle. Conjugated bile acid has to form the micelle. So it is transported to D2. So from the liver it is transported to D2 because it is in second part of deodorant. This is bile salt which actually forms the micelle. Although I told you roughly that bile acid forms the micelle, it is a bile salt which forms the micelle. Or conjugated bile acid has to form the micelle. So it is transported to D2. So from the liver it is transported to D2 because it is in second part of deodorant that all these micelles are being formed. So transported to D2, micelle is actually formed, and this micelle will be used for fat absorption. So fat absorption, you'll be having this micelle and this micelle is being used for fat absorption. The remaining bile acid, okay, the remaining conjugated bile acid now is being taken back by the ileum. So it is taken back by the ileum. It is actually an active absorption, okay, active sodium mediated absorption, which is happening at the level of the ileum. And from the ileum, it is going back into the liver. So it is going back into the liver. Now, whatever is actually not taken back by the ileum is going into the colon. So whatever is not being taken back by the ileum is going into the colon. And the colon is deconjugated. It is deconjugated at the level of the colon to form the secondary bile acids. So the secondary bile acids are formed where they are formed at the level of the colon. What are the names of the secondary bile acid? Deoxycholic acid and liptocholic acid. So deoxycholic acid and liptocholic acid are the names of my secondary bile acids. So what are the things that are happening? Bile acid is being produced by the liver. It is conjugated with glycerol and tomato bile salts. It is transported into the second part of the duodenum where viscera are formed and that is used for fat absorption. Then it is coming into the large intestine. So it is coming into the ileum that is getting reabsorbed. And this absorption is the reason why the food is 4 grams per daily 5 grams is produced by is excreted because it is going back into the liver. And whatever is not absorbed is coming back into the colon. Then it is acted upon by bacteria in the colon to form the deconjugated secondary bile acids. Secondary bile acids are deoxycholic acid and liptocholic acid. Cholic acid and deoxycholic acid are primary bile acids. Conjugated bile acids are called bile salts. Bile salts are equal to basal formation. Okay, so I think I have made this very, very clear, and this is all that you need to know with respect to the exam. Now, what can be a bile acid defect? Bile acid defect can be a synthesis defect, which bile acid is not formed. Second, bile acid defect can be a transport defect, means bile acid is not being transported to the second part of the duodenum where micelle has to be formed. Third is that bile acid is being deconjugated because only conjugated bile salts can be used for micelle formation. So deconjugation happens. Naturally, deconjugation is happening in the colon, but deconjugated in the small intestine itself. That's very sad because if it's deconjugated in the small intestine, the micelle cannot be formed. And four, we are having a ileal disease. When you are having ileal disease, then of course this bile acid cannot be absorbed. Four issues. Okay, bile acid is not being synthesized. Why is bile acid not being synthesized? Naturally because of cirrhosis. Yes, bile acid is not synthesized. Liver issue, cirrhosis. Bile acid has to be transported across the bile duct to the second part of the duodenum. Bile duct is not there, then what can we do? It cannot reach. Bile duct is not there. There is primary biliary cirrhosis and primary sclerosing cholangitis. Both will discuss under liver. PBC is primary biliary cirrhosis, which is not primary biliary cirrhosis. Now it's called primary biliary cholangitis. PBC is where you are having a destruction of the intrahepatic bile duct. PSC is where you are having a destruction of the intra and extrahepatic bile duct. Why it is called PBC? Why the other one is called PSC? So we discussed later. So remember that transport is not possible because bile duct is destroyed here. Okay, bile duct is destroyed here. Intrahepatic bile duct is destroyed in PBC, and intra and extra is destroyed in PSC. Deconjugated in the small intestine. This is a very, very important disease. We will do a special module on this. This is called SIBO. SIBO is called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which means due to some reason, bacteria which are there in the large intestine are now coming into the small intestine. So if they come into the small intestine, what will they do? They will have to deconjugate the bile acid, which again, basically cannot be formed. And ileal disease. Whenever you think of an ileal disease, naturally it is TB that has to come to your mind and Crohn's disease. Both will discuss separately. So TB and Crohn's disease are the two diseases as far as ileal disease is concerned. And all this can actually result in what form is called SIBO. So bile acid has to be transported across the bile duct to the second part of the duodenum. This is a synthesis defect, which bile acid is not formed. Second, bile acid defect can be a transport defect, which bile acid is not being transported to the second part of the duodenum where it has to be formed. Third is that bile acid is being deconjugated because only conjugated bile salts can be used for micelle formation. So deconjugation happens. Naturally, deconjugation has to happen in the colon, but deconjugated in the small intestine itself. That's very sad because if it's deconjugated in the small intestine, then micelle cannot be formed. And four, we are having an ileal disease. When you are having ileal disease, then of course this bile acid cannot be absorbed. Four issues. Okay, bile acid is not being synthesized. Why is bile acid not being synthesized? Naturally because of cirrhosis. Yes, bile acid is not synthesized. Liver issue, cirrhosis. Bile acid has to be transported across the bile duct to the second part of the duodenum. Bile duct is not there, then what can we do? It cannot reach. Bile duct is not there. There is primary biliary cirrhosis and primary sclerosing cholangitis. Both will discuss under liver. PBC is primary biliary cirrhosis, which is not primary biliary cirrhosis. Now it's called primary biliary cholangitis. PBC is where you are having a destruction of the intrahepatic bile duct. PSC is where you are having a destruction of the intra and extrahepatic bile duct. Why it is called PBC? Why the other one is called PSC? So we'll discuss later. So remember that transport is not possible because bile duct is destroyed here. Okay, bile duct is destroyed here. Intrahepatic bile duct is destroyed in PBC, and intra and extra is destroyed in PSC. Deconjugated in the small intestine. This is a very, very important disease. We will do a special module on this. This is called SIBO. SIBO is called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which means due to some reason, bacteria which are there in the large intestine are now coming into the small intestine. So if they come into the small intestine, what will they do? They will have to deconjugate the bile acid, which means again, basically cannot be formed. And ileal disease. Whenever you think of ileal disease, naturally it is TB that has to come to your mind and Crohn's disease. Both will discuss separately. So TB and Crohn's disease are the two diseases as far as ileal disease is concerned, and all this can actually result in what? A bile acid defect. If a bile acid defect is there, who cannot be formed? Naturally, micelle cannot be formed. And micelle cannot be formed, who cannot be absorbed? Fat cannot be absorbed. So I think this part is very clear now. So I told you about the first major player, which is pancreatic lipase. Second major player, which is bile acid, and write it as conjugated bile acid for ease of understanding. And what if conjugated bile acids are not there? You'll be having issue. What are the clinical issues which can result in this? We have seen the clinical issues. Fine. Once micelles are formed, they are being transported across the small intestine and mucosal enterocyte. This transport process is a very passive process. It happens diffusion. So there's nothing big to study about. Diffusion is the reason for the small intestinal mucosal transport. So now I come to talk about defect in mucosal transport. Okay, defect in mucosal transport. So defect in mucosal transport actually happens because of diseases which affect the small intestinal mucosal integrity. Diseases affecting the small intestinal mucosal integrity will naturally result in defect in mucosal transport. The diseases affecting the small intestinal mucosal integrity are three very, very, very important diseases which we'll again study in detail. One is called as your celiac disease, another one is called as your Whipple's disease, and the third one is called as Tropical screw. So celiac disease, Whipple's disease, and Tropical screw are three very important conditions which affect the small intestinal mucosal integrity. We will see that in detail later on also, and that mucosal defective transport can also result in fat malabsorption. Okay, so I think this part is very, very clear now. There is no question, absolutely no doubt. Fat absorption is what we are studying, but it's not simple fat absorption we are studying. We are trying to place the diseases alongside with the physiology. That's called integration. So when you're having a lipolysis issue, that can be a pancreatic problem. Bile acid issue, that can be a visceral problem due to bile acid at different levels, like I have told you. Third is mucosal transport issue. Transport issue is because of a disease which affects the small intestinal mucosal integrity. Three diseases that we are going to discuss in detail later on also. That is celiac disease, Whipple's disease, Tropical screw. Any of these things can interfere with fat absorption. Correct. Once the fat is absorbed, now it is inside the intestinal epithelial cell. This fat which I'm talking about is the long chain fatty acid. It is a fatty acid that I'm not anything else. This fatty acid has to be once again combined with the glycerol to form the triglyceride, okay, to form triglyceride. And this on top of this triglyceride, this ApoB48 has to be added to form the chylomicron. So next most important thing is chylomicron formation. So we are now talking of post-mucosal issues. So I'm talking of one luminal issue, then mucosal issue, everything is done. Post-mucosal issue, it has to reach the blood. Now for it to reach the blood, inside the cell, what has to happen? What has to happen is triglyceride formation, then ApoB48 addition.